Some of the most mysterious passages in the Bible appear in the 6th chapter of Genesis. It describes a world filled with giants, corruption, and a decision by God that would change human history forever. But the deeper meaning behind this story might be far more relevant today than most people realize. The Bible tells us that there was a time when the world looked very different than it does today. According to the 6th chapter of Genesis, something unusual began to happen on the earth. The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves. This mysterious union produced offspring known as the Nephilim. These beings were described as giants, powerful warriors, and men of great renown. For centuries, scholars and theologians have debated who these sons of God truly were. Some believe they were fallen angels who descended to earth. Others believe they were powerful rulers who corrupted humanity. But what the text makes clear is that their presence marked a time when the earth became filled with violence. Humanity slowly drifted further and further away from righteousness. The Bible describes a world where evil had become deeply rooted in the human heart. Violence spread across the earth, powerful men abused their strength, and the moral boundaries that once guided humanity began to disappear. Yet in the middle of this darkness, one man stood apart. His name was Noah. Noah was described as a righteous man, a man who walked faithfully with God. While the rest of humanity descended into corruption, Noah remained committed to living a life of obedience and integrity. Because of this, God chose Noah for a task that would change the course of human history. He instructed Noah to build an ark, a massive structure designed to preserve life during the coming judgment. Because the corruption of the world had reached its limit, a flood would come. Not simply as destruction, but as a reset for humanity, a chance for the world to begin again. And while the story of the flood is one of the most well-known stories in the Bible, the events leading up to it reveal something much deeper about human nature itself. But this story is not just about giants or an ancient flood. It reveals something powerful about human nature. When we look closely at the 6th chapter of Genesis, we begin to see a pattern that appears throughout human history. Corruption rarely begins with massive acts of evil. Instead, it begins with small compromises. One generation relaxes its values, the next generation questions them. Eventually, society reaches a point where right and wrong become blurred. Psychologists today describe this process as moral normalization. When people are repeatedly exposed to unethical behavior, they slowly begin to accept it as normal. What once shocked a culture eventually becomes tolerated, and what is tolerated eventually becomes celebrated. History shows this pattern repeating across civilizations. Empires often begin with strong discipline and moral principles, but as prosperity increases, those principles begin to weaken. Leaders begin prioritizing power over integrity. Citizens begin prioritizing comfort over character, and slowly, societies drift further away from the values that once held them together. This is the deeper warning hidden within the story of Noah. Even when corruption becomes widespread, individuals still have the power to choose righteousness. Noah was not perfect, but he chose to remain faithful when everyone else had abandoned those values. When we bring this story into the modern world, the parallels become even more striking. Throughout history, societies have often ignored corruption until it eventually leads to collapse. One example many people remember is the collapse of the massive financial company Enron. For years, the company appeared wildly successful, but behind the scenes, executives were manipulating financial records to hide enormous losses. At first, small unethical decisions were justified as temporary solutions. But over time, those compromises grew into massive fraud. Eventually, the entire company collapsed, costing thousands of people their jobs and retirement savings. Another example happened much more recently with the cryptocurrency exchange FTX. At one point, it was valued at tens of billions of dollars, but investigations later revealed serious misuse of customer funds and unethical financial practices. Again, the downfall did not happen overnight. It happened because small ethical boundaries were crossed, again and again. Eventually, the entire system collapsed. The message behind Noah's story reminds us of something powerful. Even when corruption becomes widespread, individuals still have the power to choose integrity. Even when dishonesty seems profitable, people can still choose honesty. Even when everyone else follows the crowd, someone can still choose to walk a different path. And that reveals the divine truth. Civilizations rarely collapse because evil suddenly appears. They collapse because people slowly stop resisting it. The real question is this: when the world around you begins moving in the wrong direction, will you follow the crowd, or will you stand like Noah?